Hello there, Ray here, and we're going to be talking about some new information about 1.17. This includes the information that we got from the developers, as well as some possible leaked information on new things that are going to be in 1.17. And we're getting very close to 180,000 subscribers. So if you haven't hit the subscribe button or the bell, make sure you guys go ahead and do that. I know you'll enjoy the hundreds of videos I have showcasing the thousands of different things that I created over the last 11 years. Before we get into the possible leaked information, let's take a look at what the developers have been up to recently. First off, one of the Mojang devs, Henrik, has been working on world generation. We learned more about this in the last video. You guys can check that one out down below if you haven't already. It contains more 1.17 sneak peeks. Now in this image here by Henrik, he's been working with the world generation, and he tweaked something where it actually made the villagers produce their own little islands up in the sky. Now first off, this may seem like a little mistake that he made, even called it developer bloopers, but to actually get like stone and dirt to generate around the bottom of these villages is very unlike vanilla Minecraft. Most of the time, if you see like a floating village, it'll look something like this one where there's a very blocky patch of dirt that's holding up the structure, preventing it from falling into like a ravine. This is a good indication that they're making some changes not only to the generation of caves, but also to structures and how they handle situations where they are floating. Now, not all of the village is up here. If we look back down on the ground, we can see there's a pathway, and there was this big, huge ravine here. This might be part of the new caves. That might have been the thing that caused it to generate the structures up above. It will be interesting to see if they make some really big cave openings on the surface, so big that a village could actually generate down into the ground. Or you might even see them ending up kind of being completely supported, just like these guys are, but not this high up in the sky. Henrik was added again. He made some more little happy accidents with these really funny looking flowers. And you can even see he's holding one of these flowers in his hand. Now these aren't a new type of flower. He does go down here to clarify that they're not new flowers and he just needed a placeholder to test something else. So he just put these dandelions with a little bit of random pixels. Make it easy to identify in his new testing world. What could be this completely different thing that he's working on that he needed a texture for to kind of work off of? Now, one thing he might be working on is the new light source that he mentioned here. This is a video of the prototype cave generation, and they temporarily made the ores glow up, but this is not how they're going to have them. And down below, he has it mentioned the glowing ores are a placeholder for a new light source. Now, having new light sources in caves isn't actually new information. During the Minecon event, they did talk about how they want to have light sources throughout the caves, and one example they showed during the stream is this glowing vine here. You can see it is putting off a light, and like over here it's darker, and everywhere where there's vines it is brighter. But we're not sure what other type of light sources are going to be in the other types of caves. For these really big ones like this, there's going to have to be something that kind of matches with the walls and doesn't look too weird. And this new block that Henrik is working on might just be that. You might be thinking of some kind of thing that puts off like light, but fits more into the caves than a flower does. Now something like the mushroom plants do put off light, but it's really low, like light level 1. But you can find mushrooms inside of caves. So maybe it's a plant kind of like that, but puts off more light. Maybe even a plant that kind of sticks to walls. Now, a different Mojang developer called Ulruf actually had a special stream which he called Intentional Game Design. We invited on some very popular YouTubers like Etho, Cubfan, Exumavoid, and Echo to join him in a discussion about how the gameplay should be in the new 1.17 Caves and Cliffs update. It was a very interesting stream lasting 4 hours. You can watch the entirety linked below, but during the stream he did address quite a few different things about the 1.17 update. One of the first things that was discussed was the bundle. And since he was among more veteran players, they quickly pointed out that the bundle wouldn't fix the problem to do with inventory management. But the bundle is not actually trying to help with late game inventory management or even mid game inventory management problems. It's just for very early game when you acquire tons of different blocks during your travels. And Ulruf as well as the developers are well aware that this isn't going to fix some other problems with inventory management, including hotbar management, meaning you have too much stuff in your hotbar, you can't move it in and out because you got tools there, as well as weapons and some building blocks. You just can't fit everything in there. It doesn't solve the inventory management, just that your inventory is way too small for the variety of blocks there is in the game. But during the discussion of the bundle, a critical point was made. Even though the bundle is early game, it should still have some kind of redstone interactions. Currently, the bundle really can't be put into like hoppers to unload it, or droppers or dispensers to get the items out of it. But like most stuff in the game Minecraft, it should be well rounded enough to have other uses besides the general one. one. So hopefully we'll see that when they come out. The warden was also discussed about, and he did mention that this biome that he lives in is called the Dark Deep biome. So there's good indication that there will be different types of biomes underneath the world unrelated to other parts of the world. Now, one of the things I suggested that the warden should be able to do is to break the blocks that are inside of his biome to get after players that come into his domain. Similar to like the Ender Dragon, when you go into the Ender Dragon's domain, he's able to break blocks. Unlike the Ender Dragon who breaks blocks that are not native to his biome. I think the warden should only break blocks that are in his biome. That way if somebody's like strip mining through his biome, he can use his echolocation to track the player in the walls and actually break his way to the player and attack him. I have a deterrent so players don't try to hide in the wall and attack him, or constantly strip mining at the bottom of the world. Because he is so big, players can easily just make a little hole and hide inside of it to prevent him from attacking them. So it will be interesting to see how powerful the warden actually is. We already know that his attacks are very damaging, but if the player can easily escape them or avoid them, it kind of loses the scariness of this mob. Now the Skulk sensor was also talked about. They did mention that it's very early in its development, and they are looking for feedback on how this sensor should work. I personally think that there should be a toggleable switch on this thing to make it like have a high mode and a low mode. Where the high mode, it can detect really big changes in the world, where the low mode detects very small changes. Like a big change might be someone breaking a big block, and like a small change might be somebody like walking. That way the sensor is not picking up like everything, and maybe it makes it more useful in a wider variety. There's also quite a bit of concern about the Skulker sensor, that it's constantly checking for things happening around its area, which could cause problems if you have tons of these in your world. Also that every time it gets an input from any little random thing, it's also sending out tons of information to other ones around it, which could lay down servers. And if they try to put too much useful things into one little device, it might end up not being good at anything. Let's say you're trying to use it to make a clock, but it ends up picking up a small change like a block changing states. And this would accidentally create a infinite clock. So if it's really prone to creating clocks, it might not be too useful. I'd love to hear what you think the Skulker sensor should do. Now there was quite a bit of talk about archaeology during the event, as Ulrich has been doing a lot with that. Some points that he made about archaeology is that he wants it to be more of a kind of a slower early game thing. You're not going to get like the best weapons or the best armor out of this thing, but you may get like more cosmetic things out of it, as well as like storytelling and lore and collectibles. So there might be some rare stuff you can get out of it, but it's not very useful. Kind of like the pottery shards, maybe some different symbols are quite rare to get. But he did mention that putting different combinations of the artifacts in a certain way could potentially do something, but he was concerned that as soon as they release this into the game, people are just going to look into the Minecraft code and figure out all the secrets to do with it. So he said it's very challenging to kind of come up with cool things without people discovering it just by checking into the Minecraft code. But he did say that in archaeology, he really doesn't want there to be like traps, similar to like Indiana Jones movies. He thinks that there is already quite a few traps in different structures, and he wants this to be more about like discovery. But he did say he wants to have multiple uses for the brush tool. So people are trying to think of different things that they can use it for, such as like painting. If you guys have any cool ideas what else the brush can be used for, make sure to share them. Another thing they mentioned is that he doesn't want the players to know which gravel blocks have the different treasure inside of it. He doesn't want you to be able to like look at it, like pull up your F3 and see any kind of information about it. So it'll be interesting to see how they implement this into the game. But it does seem like only the blocks that are inside of an archaeology site will have this unique behavior. So you can't do this to like everything. Now it is called the Caves and Cliffs update. So he did talk a bit about mountains and cliffs and mountain goats. And one of the things he said is that they're working on parity to do with snow between the Bedrock edition and the Java edition. If you go onto the Minecraft wiki parity page and you just type in snow, there is 27 results related to snow. Also in Bedrock, you can have multiple layered snow inside of your inventory. You can have like, instead of a single layer of snow, you can have like 2 or 3 or 4 as the actual block. But probably the biggest change that Bedrock has that Java doesn't have is that their snow layers are like gravity falling blocks. So if they don't have any support on them, they'll just fall downwards until they find a block to land on. And when more layers fall down, they can just keep stacking up. This also happens when it snows. You don't just get a single layer of snow, it can actually get thick in some areas and thinner in others. And their snow layers automatically melt in snowless biomes. This part here probably would be considered a bad thing to have in Java. There's also a change on how they stack up pixel-wise. Even though snow layers look so tall, their actual collision is different. So with a single snow layer on the ground, you actually get no collision, but every added snow layer to that one will give it a collision which appears to be like the previous one. And some plants in Bedrock Edition can actually be snow logged. If we take a look at this image here, you can kind of see all these different vegetation have snow underneath of them. It looks a lot more natural compared to Java, which would have a big, huge green square there. And even layered snow like this flower here is almost completely covered. Now, during this discussion, minecarts were brought up for a brief moment. And the way that the Mojang developer Ulraf responded is he made it sound like they would not be touching minecarts during the 1.17 update. Now this information kind of contradicts what we see in this post here by Felix, where it says, when I convince another person to read the Java minecart dismounting code. Now this could be unrelated to 1.17, it could just be them doing some bug fixes, but it would make a lot of sense that they would work on minecarts during the cave update, especially since the cave update is going to probably take almost an entire year for them to work on it. Minecarts would be a big part of like kind of moving around in caves, especially kind of establishing a base inside of a cave or transporting different goodies throughout your cave. But this might actually be part of something similar, which is the leaked information related to minecarts. And that is this image here. This is actually an image taken by one of the Mojang developers to address a bug in the game. In the bug report, the player was complaining that when llamas would spit through water, the spit wouldn't always make it to the wolf on the other side. It would just somehow vanish in between. You can actually see this in game. This is where we tested all the different types of projectiles getting ricocheted or moved by bubble columns. And you can see that when he shoots out the spit itself is that kind of bluish entity that you see there for a split moment. And it also has a hitbox, which are these little lines around it. But as soon as it goes into water, the actual entity vanishes, but the particles, which don't really mean anything, continue going forward. So the spit is vanishing. Once in a while you see it kind of gets ricocheted off the top of this, and then like just vanishes over here. So in trying to fix this bug, the developer named Tommy Silverman put up 2 screenshots of him trying to test it out. Now he did get some mixed results because sometimes it seems like the llama in some locations can actually hit the wolf through the water. But like in the setup that I showed, the wolf is never ever hit. But what does this image have to do with leaked information? Now we can see there is some rails in his inventory. Also a minecart here. This is the TNT ones. Also, here's a minecart. The Mark Dickinson as well as Blue Crab 2 brought it to my attention that if we look at the very top of this image, he actually has a screenshot of his entire window. His Minecraft window includes the name of his client. His client's called Minecraft 1.17 Waterlogged Rails. So it appears that he was using this client to work on waterlogged rails. Now this is a Java client, and in Java there is no waterlogged rails. Bedrock Edition has a lot more things that can be waterlogged compared to the Java edition. This includes a lot of different redstone components, including rails. Here's power rails, normal rails. They can all be waterlogged with a source block of water. Even some redstone components can be covered with flowing water and still work just fine. So does that mean we're going to see a waterlog update to the Java edition that's on par with the Bedrock edition? It definitely seems so, but it most likely won't be a full parody exactly like Bedrock edition. Now if we look at this title in more detail, it shows a little picture of the crafting table, which is the image for versions that are snapshots. Now if it's the full release, it usually shows a piece of grass. And here it says Minecraft with a little asterisk here. That usually means that it's a modified version of Minecraft. 1.17 we just assume means 1.17 update. There's a slash, then it says waterlogged-rail, probably some modded version of the Java where waterlogged rails actually work. And then it's at, and then this is some hex code, which doesn't really seem to mean anything when I looked it up. And then single player just means that it's a single player world. Seeing as it is the cave and cliff update, it would make sense that mine shafts and like minecart and stuff to do with mining would be looked at in more detail, including rails and how rails will work in waterlogged areas. Because currently, if the caves around are waterlogged, mine shafts are still not waterlogged. So maybe mine shafts will have parts that are waterlogged and the rails can sit in there just fine. And with a new caving system, there might be new types of structure that include rails. It'll be interesting to see how do minecarts actually handle being drove underneath the water. Will they like go slower, or will they work differently at all? And most importantly, what does this mean for other components in Java? Will they also now be waterlogged, including redstone, which means you could do some pretty compact and cool things. I'd love to hear what you guys think about this and any other parity changes that you think might come along with it. Don't forget to share this video with other Minecrafters, as well as leave a like, because I would really appreciate that. And I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.